absolute beast. He doesn't hold back. He just goes 100% of the time. Will definitely go down as one of the greats of South African rugby.
He's an incredible piece of physical ability. He's just caught man and ball.
And Schalk for Reed. Little ball for Schalk. That's a wonderful try. Pick up by Schalk and try. Two decorated Springboks working in concert. Feeds Wigglesworth. Berger. Good cover defence from Saints. What an offload to Wiles.
And he was in a coma, literally. So it can go either way. There's a 50% chance of dying, probably.
Well, you can hear the crowd building to a crescendo. You consider where he was, not only in his career, but on a hospital bed, and straight into the thick of the action.
Schalk Berger, he is back. I want to be here, I want to win rugby matches, and I want to do my bit.
Desperate tackle made by Ioane. Now Berger muscling his way to the line and over.
That's an incredible piece of physical ability. He's just caught man and ball.
Going into the season, we've stacked our priorities, customer supply first. Our 10 manufacturing plants has got more paper stock than ever. We've installed generators, solar panels, water tanks. Our company values is to be resolute, trustworthy and responsible, and I hope you can see that in the way we conduct our business. For more than 100 years, Mpact has been alongside your families, supplying quality cartons with trust and integrity. In the early 2010s, Mpact decided to match your investment in the agricultural space. Here in PE Quebeca, we installed a new corrugator, and in the last 12 months, we've rebuilt the factory to create more space for paper supply, paper stock, and finished cartons. There's solar panels in there and a massive water tank to harvest rainwater. In the north, we're in our second phase of enlarging our customer service center, and that will help us to work around these civil unrest interruptions where you can't get trucks through to the farmers and the pack houses, and also where packing programs change overnight to be able that we can respond quicker. In the Western Cape, we've done the same on technology upgrades to enlarge our capacity to make sure we can respond faster to changes and demands. We really believe in the resilience of this market, this agricultural space, and therefore my colleague at Mpact Paper has allocated 1.2 billion rand to the supply of paper. I think after last year and the way we've seen paper prices behave when there's a shortage, we decided that we'll invest more in paper. That is the riffelpapier, the paper in the middle of the box, and it's quite a big investment for us as a company, and we do believe it will help us to become a sustainable partner as Mpact to all of you. We are grateful for the opportunity to stand next to you, that you've allowed us to become part of your business and share in your success. We appreciate the chance to build long-term relationships and to find those paths around the obstacles. Patty and Schalk's going to be on the stage, and I hope through that you can see this is the way we like to conduct business and that we're resolute, trustworthy and responsible. I thank you.
Guys, when you talk about toughness, and I'm not here to blow anything, 320 first-class games, 3 World Cups, 1-1. World Cup Player of the Year twice. World Comeback Player of the Year once. South African Player of the Year 3 times. Guys, and he's been through stuff that's going to make you think and reassess and recalibrate. I don't think we've got all the answers today, but our intention today is that you can all leave here with some inspiration and some self-reflection, and you can enjoy yourself. I think that's the most important here. So, Schalk, just a quick one to fire away. you're born and bred in PE. He had a late night last night, guys. I think he came in when the guards were rocking up. Schalk, tell us a bit about your background from Port Elizabeth. Your dad was a legend in those days.
Yeah, the Obas, he played rugby out here. And, you know, the only stories I've ever heard of him is hoe hard hulle die ouens gebliksem het, this PE side. And then I got invited, we played a game here at the Boet Erasmus, so I got invited to a bit of a reunion, and then I understood why they bliksemed Oaks so hard. The Oaks was so rough, but it was a good evening. I mean, if the most mild one there was Dani Gerber, then you sort of know that, shit, this team was different level, you know. So, Paddy, I've got to help you right there. I mean, obviously you're a hooker, so counting's not your strong suit, but like, I actually did four World Cups, I only won one, so like I missed out on a few more. And then Christoph had gesê, trustworthy, responsible. We're definitely not responsible, neither of us, yeah. So, it's wonderful being here, and, you know, hopefully I can tell some good stories if Patty allows me to.
Yeah, guys, so we're going to... Schalky started off at Paul Gym, and interesting, he was a SA mountain bike champion. He reminded me last night, he scored a couple of hundreds at Grey P, and I see Mayring and JJ, there's some old grey guys here, the Waltons, Bob Maskey. When did rugby come on the radar with you?
It was always on the radar. You know, obviously, your name is Schalk Burger, your pa was Schalk Burger. You played for the Springboks. You don't really have a choice. You know, you 6'3" or 6'4". You've got to play rugby. But like, I preferred cricket. It was predominantly high school where the divide happened. Like my achievements in cricket was just great. Last night I was with a few boys at Oaks. I played second team against them when I was standard 9. Boet Maton wat hier is, he played flanker with me. Also nice to see Adri Badenhorst there, and JJ, you know, like I played with Adri for the Stormers early 2000s, and JJ a little bit later on, about 2010, before he had to jump to the Bulls. You know, we couldn't do that, but like obviously the younger generation had no problem swapping allegiances from the south to the north. But yeah, so like I was obviously at Paul Gym, and I got there stand at 6. I was playing under 14 cricket, and I made 100 in my 3rd or 4th under 14 game. So at that stage, our cricket was really not in a good space at Paul Gym. And yeah, that was the first 100 that was made there for, I think, 5 years. So they sort of plonked me into the first team as a 14-year-old. And first game, I think, made 4 or 5, didn't see a ball. I don't know, like edged all of them through the slips, and then eventually got caught at first slip. And then the second game, I made 100 there as well. So then I was sort of, you know, roped into first team cricket for life. You know, it was the first 100 at Paul Gym for 5 or 6 years in the first team. And then finished school actually with a cricket contract. So went across there, a little academy contract at the Super Juice Academy, whatever, all of $450 a month, which, you know, for me was amazing. And then I started playing some Kosses rugby on the side. Played for Eendrag. We got to a plate final against Elsenburg. Obviously, I said, okay boys, vandag is die dag dat ons die boere boelie. And then die slim manne van Eendrag, we put 40 on them there at Kutsenburg. The next moment, I got asked, I went back to cricket, got asked to do a Bloemfontein. So we had Marties go to Koffsies, we go on the train. I said, I'm all in for this. And the under 19 junior Vics and junior Marties, the under 21s, the game was overlapping. So they wanted a guy to sit on the bench to cover like lock, flank, eighth man, whatever. So I said, I'm up for it. They had about 12 beers on the overnight trip. And the oak was playing above me as a boy, like Cobus Smith. He actually got a stomach bug and withdrew. So the next moment, I was starting at number 8. And first it was a negotiation because my flankers was a guy called Justin Malcolm, Bossy Clark, Groot Bossy Salati. And both of them English guys wanted to play 8th man, so I said, no, ek sal 8ste man speel. And that was my entry into it. I mean, geez, like it was almost like I played for a new team every other week. You know, started playing junior Marties, played 2 games there, then I got invited to Vics, got Vics, then played for Vics 2 games, then played senior Marties. And this is all like 2 months after I was playing for Marties first team cricket. So the next moment I was playing there, and Jake White came to watch InterVarsity against Tikkies. And Tikkies had a massive side. They came down with, that was the year where, you know, I'd altyd gesê, wat is die verskil tussen die bulle se super rugby span en 'n Samosa? En hulle gesê Samosa het 3 punte. They only got 2 points in that entire year. So InterVarsity became quite a big thing for them. So they came down with Kobus Leroux, Gio Cronje, Jacques Cronje, Fourie de Pre. Koenraad Groenewald was on the bench behind Fourie de Pre, Boeta Wessels. Massive team came down, and we were a bunch of youngsters. Obviously a good side now. and we beat them. Luckily for us, it was raining down there, and the field mud was about that thick. So did that game, and the next moment, Jake White said, like, where are you from? So I said, no, shit, I'm actually a cricketer, but I'm drilling on the side a bit. And I got invited to SA Under-21s in that year. And, the rest, as they say, is history. Next year I was, lifting Adrie Badenhorst and lineouts and stuff, and trying to learn how to call them. Yeah.
Just to touch on the coaches, and I think it's quite an interesting thing. Jake White specifically, I was at a talk with him 2 weeks ago, and they asked him who's the best player he's ever coached. He said Schalk Burger. It's like having two guys on the field when he's making like a double tackle count. Fearless, unselfish, does the dirty work. If you had to cast your mind back with Jake, how did he affect your career?
Yeah, I think we've got to get one thing straight. There's no such thing as a normal coach. Yeah, let's allemaal half kens. But I mean, the fact that we actually get through a rugby career still being quite normal is it's a surprise. I mean, not all of them is up there. But I started off, I think, when I started as a youngster, you just play. You just have a full go. And the first guy that really, I think, set it off to me was when Ian Kirkpatrick. He was still hanging around by Vic's there, and he said, Schalky, just play. And I think if anyone asks me advice now, I would say a youngster, I said, that's the greatest advice ever. Just don't think, just play. Just have a draw. But then my first coaches that really made an impact on me was actually, I loved Karel du Plessis, and I like how relaxed and advanced he was and how he thought about the game, especially attack at that time. He was an assistant coach at Stormers, but a head coach at Currie Cup. And then Gert Smal of how structured he was. Gert, I think the first time he spoke to me was in my second full season. The first time we got caught in a lift together, and I think that's the first time we actually said words to each other. So it took us a while to become close, but then I really appreciated him. And then obviously Jake White, he's the one that backed me. So he picked me up from Marty's as nothing and chucked me in the SA Under-21 side in 2002. And we had immediate success. So we won in 2002 Under-21 with a really good Under-21 side. We went through it the other day, but like a proper Under-21 side. A lot of us, became Springboks. Farida Priya was on the bench with me. Ricky January was starting Swiss. Swart, who passed away in a car accident, he was number 10. Clyde Rathbone, who later played for Australia. Dewey Swartbo, John de Villiers, Yuri Viljoen, Ashwin Willemse on the other one. He would have walked off stage by now, but he was in there as well. So, from a young side, we had a lot of success, and I think we created a lot of trust between the coach and the players. And then when Jake in 2004 took over, because in between that, we obviously had Rudolph. And jeepers, we went through some stuff. And we went to a World Cup in 2003, and if we did a triathlon, we would have won. But unfortunately, there was a Rugby World Cup, so we didn't. We lost in the quarterfinals. Obviously, ons het staaldraad gehad, ons het kaal geslaap, mekaar geboks, mekaar gebliksem. It was the weirdest time. So, but obviously the benefit from 03, so when Jake took over in 04, even though we were young, we knew how not to do it. And I think, sometimes in life that is a valuable lesson, to know how not to get things right. So Jake took over, and he walked into that meeting and he was like, listen, manne, ons gaan in 2007 die rugby wêreldbeker wen. En ons is eerlikheid, 3 manne dag gerook, versekerheid. I mean, we were ranked number 7 in the world. Obviously, the team was in tatters. He got Os back, he got Percy back. The first time I saw Os walk, he could hardly walk. I thought, how's this going to run? Sy knieë in sy moeren. Anyway, long story short, we held it together and we obviously got the result in 07. So I really like Jake, and he really backed me, which is, I guess it works both ways. And then we've got Pieter de Villiers, PDV, Piet Helium. And I mean, to be honest, he walked in there and we thought, this is going to be tough. And in 08 was quite a tough year because Pete had his ideas. And we had our ideas about how to play. And even though we were very inconsistent in 08, we had amazing results. Ricky January beating the All Blacks in Dunedin with a dummy Kevin Milamu, chip and chase. First time ever. We had a record score against England in the same year until this weekend where England capitulated against France. 42-6. Steve Borthwick, by the way, was captain of that game. So he holds both records now. The record for a losing captain and coach. And then we also had a record score against Australia at Ellis Park. We put 60 past them. So like we grown to love Peter, and then what he was exceptional at was, he was big enough to sit back in 2009 to say, listen here, this team is so far developed that I must just facilitate them. And that's what he did in 2009. We probably had one of the greatest years in Springbok history, beat the All Blacks 3 times, won the Lions Tour. Incredible year. And then Nick Mallett became Barbarians coach, and he invited 10 of the Springboks to go, and we beat the All Blacks again. So some of us beat the All Blacks 4 times in 1 year in 2009. We couldn't remember much of the last one because we were bubblers when we pitched up for it. So, and then I went across, obviously, there's also not good coaches. We've had plenty of them. At the Stormers, we had a big wobble for a long time. After Gert and Karel left. And then I played abroad lots. So it's interesting to see how, Saracens, we had a lot of success. So I didn't have a lot of success on a franchise or domestic level for a long time. I think we lost about every single semi-final playoff we attempted to win. We lost. So we actually were super successful. We averaged over 6-7 years in Stormers, we averaged 80%, the highest win ratio in the competition, but we never won a trophy. And I went across to Saracens, and we played under Mark McCall, who's completely a stats-based coach, similar to a guy like Rassie. So stats determines who he picks, what his team is. But then underneath him, he had a bunch of guys who really coached the detail of how we're going to get our results. So completely process-driven, not result-driven, because often you sit with coaches and they're so hell-bent about the result that you forget, what's the building blocks to actually get that result, what you've got to do well to surefire that you can actually get this result. And so we had immense success there, obviously with a great side. We won 4 trophies in 3 years, 2 European, 2 premierships. So proved that I'm not jinxed, I can actually win some trophies.
Brendan Venter was involved, and we believe he had an interesting take on family and giving you time off with your family.
Yeah, Brendan, I think the culture was South African culture, which felt super natural to us, where everyone's all-inclusive, families there. We've got a family room. The Springboks got a family room too. You'll see video clips often of the girls, the little girls, the boys, everyone with the wives in the same room as the players having lunch or dinner or supper or drinks or whatever the case might be. So Brendan installed that there, and obviously he found it quite hard because, now we're away from South Africa, where England, the weather is not lekker. So he actually separated with the main team room in 2 and created a creche on the side. So all of us pitched up with our kids, chucked them in the creche, and then when we were training, the kids would come watch or run around on the field next to us. So it's such a warm environment by Saracens. And I think if you go, you look at the English stronghold of rugby, it's probably the Midlands, where rugby is so serious. They sit in different changing rooms. So even if you're a newcomer like JP Peterson, who played 80 test matches, he started with the youngsters. Hy het buite gesit in 'n Wendy huis in die ijskoue until he qualified that he can actually move into the main building and then into the main office. And then when they accepted him, he was in. Where Saracens is a completely open system. Whether you own Farrell with 100 test matches or a youngster with no experience, first year out of school, we're all sitting in the same changing room. The kids are having lunch with us. So yeah, Brendan, to his credit, basically enforced, this is the South African way. This is the way that we are going to treat each other as Saracens. And I think the club has got some cultural issues now because Brendan's not there to drive it home. And it doesn't come naturally to Mark McCall, who's a Northern Irishman, which says about 6 words a year. So, having all the kids there, I think messes up his prep a bit for the week. But every now and then, Saracens are big enough to sit down and say, look, this is the walls, the names against the walls, the things we live by. And we draw it back to the basics and, become a family operation again.
Touching the World Cup coming up at the moment, big debates about, do you pick Dwayne? Do you keep the old guys in? Caps win World Cups. Yeah. I think what's quite important is obviously to keep that culture and those 35 key guys. You'd heard story with Rassie, each guy was rated. You've obviously been there. How difficult is it to keep that whole group together as one for 6-7 weeks when you're in a confined space? Yeah,
I think the box is not only the 6-7 weeks, Paddy. I think, because our players are based all over Japan and in Europe, we're pretty much an even split now where they're based. And then we've obviously got our local-based talent. We never spend time together, because World Rugby only releases them the Sunday before a test match, so they can actually only join them Sunday evening. So we spend a week before a test match, 5 days of prep where we've got an off day between that. So 4 days of prep before we enter any big competition. But then for World Cup year, and it was done predominantly for the South Sea Island nations, Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, they actually extended that period. So for a World Cup year, the guys will get released from June. And then the box won't leave camp. They'll be in June till October. So I think the previous World Cup, they spent 18 weeks together. And that's just, I think, the commitment from every single of these pros, in big dollars overseas, how dedicated they are to the box. They spend 18 weeks together. So to keep that thing together, and it's not only 35 then, in the beginning it's a bigger group, so it will be 50 plus. And I think the box work best when there's a definite first team and a second team. I don't think we're too competitive to say, okay, it's open. And I went to two World Cups where it was open, Rudolf Streuli's World Cup and actually Heineke Meyer's World Cup where it was open. And our first game against Japan that we lost, in Brighton, I think Eddie Jones held every single camp at Brighton. It was almost like, their Pearl Harbor. Japan got the win over the box. But we went there and it was almost like a trial match because there was too many spaces up for grabs. There's too many guys playing for their position. And ultimately, that cost us the game. But like Dwayne, whether he's going to go to the World Cup or not, I'm a massive Dwayne fan. I played almost all my rugby at the Stormers with Dwayne. He came a bit later than me, but he was there in front so low. We were the loose forwards. And the nice thing about Dwayne's position, the ball's in his court. If Dwayne plays rugby that's representative of starting for the box, he's going to be selected because he knows Rassie's in his court as well. At the moment, I'll say probably Jasper Wiese's number one. If you look what he's doing at Leicester and what he's doing in Europe, that might change. And the hard thing about taking a guy like Dwayne to the World Cup is just the squad balance. So we'll take 3 loose forwards, whoever the best may be. So it's going to be your open sider, which see probably blindside Peter Steff. And at present, if you go on the last test match, Jasper Wiese. Then you're going to pick your super sub, whoever that's going to be. We go 6-2 split, but there's going to be 4 locks in that group. So it's Kwacha. And then you've got to say, listen, okay, can we take a dedicated 8th man to do that? If you take in the previous World Cup, you had Schalk Brits doing that. So if you go to this next World Cup where you've got to take in your forward group 3 hookers, that's why a guy like Dion Free makes so much sense. So instead of taking a 3rd hooker, Paddy, so in case you're missing out, you've got Dion Free because he can cover all 3 loose forwards positions. And the same counts for the back. So you've got to have 3 scrum halves. You've got to have a position-specific number 10. But by having a guy like Damian Willems who can cover 15, 12, 13, 10, you can maybe take another 10. So you can maybe have whoever's the next best 10 we've got now. Marnie Lebok or Elton Yankees. If he's paid his room bill in Nelspruit or he's settled it. So, it's so hard to judge that. And, because we've got 4 locks that we pick every time. We've got 4 best locks in the world if Ergie Snyman's back. And a lot of them can play flank as well. So your squad setup is difficult.
Evan Roos?
For sure. Evan's got a big chance too. I quite like having him on the bench always. It's almost like Kwak. He brings something different because we're so abrasive, we're so direct. We tuck the ball under the jersey and run over people. But having someone that moves a bit more dynamic, he gives us some options, breaks the gain line, gets the offloads going, maybe passes it before contact, definitely gives us that option because we're not going to boss every game. If we boss a game and we bring like for like on, we just boss the entire game. But so often you've got to change the complexity of the game or you're chasing a game. If you then bring on the same type of player for the same type of player, you don't get a different result. You get the same outcome. But if you bring someone who's a bit more dynamic, sees the game a bit differently, moves differently, all of a sudden that can cause a change in momentum.
Schalk, you must have played with some absolute beauts, and I think the characters really make up a tour. You must have some, who really stands out for you, and you were telling me a couple of stories last night. That I see there are a couple of ladies, but they can just block their ears.
Yeah, well, if it gets a bit naughty, it's just par for the course, isn't it? It was a rugby chat. But obviously, there's some tough blokes you play against. You often go, you say, no, you play against, foreigners, and you play against Jerry Collins, and you play Richie McCaw, you play George Smith. They're obviously outstanding players and tough. But then in South Africa, I think it's almost worse because you play against these oaks from you were 8-year-old, and you build a grudge, and you see when you're flying around there and tackling oats, knocking them out. But it's a pity I've got free because there's a lot of blue bulls I wanted to tackle like that. I just couldn't get a hold of them. Fourie is actually infinitely nice, you know. So, I mean, but, Bakkies Botha was just a brute, you know. Like, I was open side flanker for the Stormers. Yeah, he was the enforcer, Bakkies. You know, he used to run on turn left, go pray for all the sins he's going to do in the next 80 minutes. But we played a test match in Perth, Australia. So same ruck, I cut my eye, so I'm down, and Bakkies is down. Now, Bakkies is never down. So now I'm getting strapped up. Still a big mop of hair, but now I'm like, you've got to pluck the Vaseline, and then you've got to tape it, because otherwise it slips up the whole time. Now it would be perfect. I mean, it's got a lot of place to stick onto. And I'm sitting there, but now I'm overhearing, so it's taking time to sort out my cut, but I'm overhearing this conversation with Doc Craig Roberts, an English guy from Durban. He was rebuilding BMW motorbikes, Thin Oak surfer. Afrikaans is nie sy eerste taal nie. En Bakkies Botha. So Bakkies sits there, he says, Doc, my back is killing me. So now the doc's like, listen, but Bakkies, tell me a bit more. I mean, I want to know. Bakkies says, Doc, my back is killing me. Anyway, handful of pills, washes it down. Next break and play, 10, 15 minutes later, same thing. I'm getting strapped up, Docky is straight. I've got the physio, Docky's straight to Bakkies. Bakkies going, Doc, my back is killing me. He says, Bakkies, can you make it to the halftime? He says, yes, I'm playing 50 minutes, but my back is killing me. He says, okay, Pilla, let's get halftime. We get into halftime. Nou, Joggenas, Moersever. Like, it's in the corner there. We're playing at the Subiaco. It's a big AFL stadium. So now it's like running 800 meters to get to your changing room. So now I'm jogging, but now I like go to Bakkies, and Bakkies had this funny little, almost like his lower back's gone, little jog. You know, if he wasn't walking, he was running, and if he's jogging, it's uncomfortable. He's like this. So now I'm thinking, okay, this oak's back's really gone. They run down the tunnel. Now I'm getting stitched up. So now Bakkies comes 6 minutes later walking in. So now the doc's panicking. He says, Bakkies, your half time is short. We got to get you sorted. Take off your shirt. So he takes off his shirt. But you see Bakkies looking a little bit perplexed. He says, okay, lie down. Where's it sore? And he's starting to rub his hand up his back. He says, Doc, my back, not my back.
That reminds me of a story. I played a few games for Eastern Province, and it's quite sad. The Boet Erasmus Stadium just up the road is completely gone. We gave them a good go, and most teams for about a half, but there was a butte called Frans Erasmus. And if you remember Frans Erasmus, Domkrag, hy het so klein vingers, het gelyk soos cocktailworsies. And we had a team talking, this was my second game. So I said, kom ons kyk vir mekaar in die oë. And they would like pull each other. So you got to go like poor to human. Toe hy jonk was, hy het deur 'n robot gery in dispatch, so daai een oog van hom werk nie lekker nie. As hy so knik, die een kom so 'n minuut later. Hy bly so oop. So we ran, so Donnie says, wil iemand iets sê? It's like a minute to go for the game. So Francie, hy wil iets sê. Hy sê, he was a mechanic. He said, hy wil net weer waar ek 'n gearbox kan kry vir 'n Rover. So he looks, so then Donnie said automatic of manual. Shame he's no longer with us, but those are classic stories. Schalk, I think just to pull back to the group, you've got probably 700 growers and everyone involved in the industry. And Schalk, it's been like hectic. I know the Langkloof just the other week got wiped out. I mean, it's just story. It's wave after wave after wave. And I just want to just reflect back a bit that it wasn't always wonderful and fantastic for this guy next door here, guy sitting next to me. His family were called in to say goodbye to me. He was almost in a coma. And I wonder if you could just talk us through that, what went through Hannes de Waal. He had a beautiful message. He found that faith, family, and friends pulled him through. And I just wonder if you could just take the guys through that, what went through in those dark days, and how you bounced back. You always seem to bounce back.
Yeah, I guess it's not only that, you know, I think it's every time. Most rugby players will know, when you get a big injury. So my first one is in 2006, where actually we're playing at the Boet against Scotland. And, you know, I started my career in 2002, and then, you know, it almost seemed like every weekend, the bigger risk you take, the bigger the reward. You know, you were flying into stuff that you never should walk out from, but you were just doing it, you know, and the bigger the risk you took, the bigger the plaudits, and you know, you seemed unbreakable. And you almost get to this point where, you know, the risk you're taking is off the charts, but you somehow bounce up and get up and you do something small, like you break a finger or you you do a small little AC joint on your shoulder, you get cut up, or you lose a couple of your digits up front, but somehow you bounce back up. And I tried to line up this prop, and I was charging at him, and before I got him, someone else got him. So instead of tackling him with my shoulder, I tackled him head on. Anyway, ran off, got stitched up, finished the game, and then straight after the game, went for a few beers, actually ended up in the old pavilion, Toby Joe's, was it called? Is it Toby Joe's? Yeah, you saw? Net you saw any part of? And then walked from there straight to the doc and said, "Doc, I'm in big trouble." Sat in his bath and couldn't move. Neck gone. So I had a neck fusion at age 23, which, I mean, at that stage was massive. You now want to play a rugby career, but you've got half a neck left. And I think the biggest thing that came out of that, even though I was 23 years old, is that we've got to change our game. I've got to change my game up. I've got to evolve down a different pathway, because now for 4 years I've been chucking myself around like a mad thing, and I've been getting the desired results. But if I want to play this game for a long time, which I was obviously striving to do, I had to change my game up. So that was, I think, the first evolution in my game, and also reality check that, shit, you can't fly into everything. You can still smoke some oaks, but like if it's not on, it's not on. It's not there for the taking. And then obviously the next big thing I had was in 2012, we just lost that horrible game, Bryce Lawrence game in 2011, where we lost against Australia in the quarterfinal with a very good side, and then came back, and then we played Transvaal away in Ellis Park and lost that thing. And then I went on a big 5-week holiday, came back feeling good. First game, got almost a career end on my left knee. So I had 3 ops on that, out for the whole year. So you just all you want to do is, it's the worst place to be as a pro rugby player is when you're injured and you're doing rehab and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And if it is, it's a train, you're back for another operation. So you just, behind the curve, behind the 8 ball, whatever. It's not going well. So I get back to 2013 and I'm like, okay, chuffed. We've fixed this knee up. Let's put a good year together. In pre-season, I was running around, and then all of a sudden I had weird pains, like it's a left groin or it's a left hamstring, a left calf, left knee. So for a long time they thought it was just because of my knee, the big knee reconstruction. Eventually went for a scan on my back, and they discovered that I had a cyst that was compressing 2/3 of my spinal cord. So the next step was going to be, I'm going to lose bladder function, and then it's going to paralyze me down my left leg. So we had to do something. Obviously, it's a bit frantic. I mean, you don't have enough bandwidth to really, digest what's happening, but went for exploratory operation. And the good news from the exploratory operation is that somewhere in my career, so for example, if this is your spinal cord and spinal fluid sits in the middle, and the plastic here is the dura, is the membrane that keeps it together, I must have taken a knock and ruptured the membrane. So spinal fluid was leaking out and filling the cyst, and your brain will produce as much spinal fluid as needed. It's like a fist dome. If the fist dome's leaking, there's a problem. If it doesn't, it's fine. It's just a closed system. So that was the good news. Bad news for me is I picked up a bacterial infection in that operation. So it went straight from the cyst, straight into my spinal cord, and then I had a staphylococcus swimming around my spinal fluid. And then I went from feeling like okay to in a coma, to out of a coma, to not knowing what's happening. And it took them 6 days to get the right strand of bacteria, antibiotics, and then they fixed me up. And day 4, they said, listen, okay, this guy, you probably survive, but there's going to be something wrong, whether he's paralyzed, memory loss, blindness, and the list goes on. And opened my eyes after 6 days, and besides some selective hearing, that's what my wife claims anyway, I was okay. I was all right, but I still had a cyst that's going to paralyze me. And then the next step started. So then it was, another 5 operations, and they couldn't actually. The pressure was so high they couldn't actually remove the cyst, so they just deflated it. So it's still there. It's just empty. It looks like a pop balloon. And that whole process took. I was in hospital for just over 4 months. The process took about 5.5 months. Went in at 110, came out at 90. And I mean, I lost so much spinal fluid that you couldn't stand up. So when you walk up, you topple over. So it was basically from walking to the bathroom, walking to the kitchen, walking around the block. That's where the base I started from. And then I went back to the Stormers, and you start training and running around. Because I was weighing 90, the running came back with 2 weeks, you could run around a bit. Went on some epic hikes in that time just to clear my head. Ek het die hele Tafelberg in Simurin geloop. And then started, getting a bit of confidence that, okay, we're fine. We just you don't want to play rugby. You just want to be, healthy, be there for your family. I had one little boy at 3 or 4 months old. And then I went for my final checkup at my surgeon, Gerrit Coetzee, and I said, listen, what's the story? Am I fine? He says, no, he uses me as examples for some of his other people. Like he can't believe how quickly I've bounced back. So I said, no, that's all fine and well. I said, luister, kan ek miskien eendag weer rugby speel? And he said, yeah, you can play rugby, but you're never going to be Schalk Burger again. Yes, and it was amper, when he said that, I was like, yo, bliksem, ek gaan vir jou wys, type ding. And then obviously the conversation I had with my wife to play rugby again was a harder one. And then I decided, okay, shit, let's give this one more bash, And yes, there's such a long step behind, because you've got to be so patient with yourself, because stuff you took for granted before, the way you could move, the way you could tackle, the way you could wrestle oaks around and bully them physically, that just disappeared. I had to go from ground zero and build myself up, and you've got to be so patient. I remember the first game I played back was I came off the bench against Cheetahs in the Currie Cup. I played the second half, but I've never been nervous in my life before a rugby game. Like I sit here, I felt before any test match, World Cup final, whatever, it's the same thing. I was just relaxed and I ran on and I played. I couldn't sleep. I had diarrhea. I was questioning whether this was the right thing to do. I was so nervous to get back on the field. Like even halftime, I was like, guys, I don't know if I'm up for this. And I ran on, caught the first ball, made a little pass, made my first tackle, and I was, okay, perfect. This is it. And then the step going from there, playing 40 minutes for Currie Cup, to getting back into a test match, it's such a long process. And the issue with, obviously, general media is like everyone's now comparing you to what they saw you last play, which is 2011 when you were South African Rugby Player of the Year. And now you're playing in 2013, end of 2013 for the first time. And they're going like, well, what's up with Schalk? And you've got to balance that media perception and your ambition that you don't go too fast. You actively got to go a little bit slower and get the processes right and understand this is 40 minutes, this is 50 minutes, this is 60 minutes. And actually the first time I thought that I was good enough to play for the Stormers or for the Boks again is we played a Barbarians game against Fiji. And Steve Hansen was the coach, and he phoned me up on my number and he said, listen here, Schalk, I know you've been through a lot. He's seen me play like 40, 50 minutes here. He says, I'm going to pick you on open side flanker. You're going to play 80 minutes because the little bit I've seen you're good enough to come play for the Barbarians. So I said, I'm so glad you think it because I think I'm shit, I'm not good enough to do this. And he flew me over. I averaged about 25 beers a day, and he plugged me in an open side flank and got a man of the match against Fiji at Twickenham. And I was like, okay, Steve, thanks. And that was like the paradigm shift I had to make to believe that I was still good enough to get back in the Boks jersey. And then it's like, okay, so I haven't played a test since 2011. It's 2014, so it's 3 years since I've played a test match. Heineke Meyer, I don't know, from a bar of Stope. He's got a style that doesn't really suit me at that stage, super conservative, super direct. No one asks questions. If you look up and you make a pass, you get dropped type of vibe. And I sort of got my way in there, and I came off the bench, played one game, and then, I started pushing. I was like, okay, een toets is nie meer genoeg, ek wil nou begin. And then, I played my final international season in 2015 and started every single test match the whole year. We played 12 of them. So, it was awesome, but no one has to go through that. That's unnecessarily hard work. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Wow. Well, guys, I took Justin Chadwick. I said, Justin, I've got a classy guy I want you to meet. So he came in. Justin's quite a difficult guy to pin down, Tanya. But we committed, and he came and we met at the coffee shop, and he asked Schalk, like, what's your best memory? And he said, having a beer after the game. So what this chap does after test matches, he goes and has a drink with his opposition. And if some of you guys look on social media, there's a World Cup team that people choose. This I've seen every single one of them. Every single one of them. So most people say, no, when I scored that try, when I did that. And I think that just epitomizes him as a guy that's humble, he's respectful, he is what he is, guys. Told me an interesting thing when he said, Paddy, I took my son to him and he said, don't define yourself with your rugby. Be your own person, and he is. And I think, Schalk, I'm just going to just say, you've been fantastic inspiration to our guys. We've got guys from, let's say, Telly. We've got Jock Dankpitz from Cat River. We've got Andrew Miller from Carino. We've got guys, Pitt Citrus. We've got guys everywhere here. They've come for some inspiration, and I can feel, I'll talk about goose flesh. And I feel it right now, guys. It's goose flesh, and it means it's real. And I honestly hope that you can have some inspiration, and maybe it's just a few things you can do different, but I think we've all got hope here. And Schalk, thanks again. You're awesome. We're going to finish off with that video again. But I just think, let's just give us an awesome round of support and applause. Yeah. When you talk about forging and building, guys, Schalk's everything what I aim for. I respect him a lot. And I just think he's what we must all strive for. I told my son last night, Dai Sian is someone you must look up to. And I just think it's amazing. And thanks for your time. Yeah, we're going to watch that video again. He's playing golf this afternoon with Gerrit van der Merwe and George Hall in the Gale. He said he's bought a lot of extra balls, but he's going to play. So, Schalk, this from us, fantastic. It's a big privilege to see you and all you guys here. Thanks for pitching, and thanks for the opportunity and listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, man.